Solar PVcast by Shift, a podcast exploring solar energy and the role it plays in improving our lives and our planet. Here's your host, Chris Palliser.
Welcome back to the Solar PVcast. That brings me much joy to say that because it's been a little while since I've been able to sit down and record some episodes of the Solar PVcast, and I'm really excited. 2026 is here. We're going to have more episodes for you, and it's going to be anything and everything to do with solar. So again, we are the Solar PVcast. My name is Chris, your host. It is brought to you by Shift for all your solar and energy storage needs. Make sure you visit shift.ca. Now, there's something big happening in British Columbia when you look at the country as a whole, and it's to do with solar because it's moving from what's called net metering program, which is what the utility there, BC Hydro, uses, and they're proposing a move to a net billing program. So they're looking at changing the system up. To join me on the podcast today to talk about exactly what these things are, we'll start at the bottom and then kind of climb our way to what this proposed change looks like, is Steve Unger, an intervener with BC Hydro's rate application to make this adjustment. Steve, welcome back to the Solar PVcast.
Thanks, Chris. It's great to be here. Happy 2026.
Yeah, we can still say that a few weeks in. I think we got some time.
I think so. I think you're good until the end of January.
There you go. Perfect. There's the rule. Okay, so before we dive into what exactly is this change and what it looks like, let's start British Columbia, the system as it is. What is net metering to begin with?
Right. So probably should say that BC Hydro is by far the largest utility provider in BC, but it's not the only one. There are a couple others, Fortis and New West and Nelson. So what we're talking about is BC Hydro. But BC Hydro does tend to lead the smaller utilities as well. Now, net metering is what we've had in place since 2004, and it is the straight exchange in kilowatt hours, so that's in energy units, of electricity that you provide back to the utility, and then they give it to you in return. So it never gets exchanged or never gets converted into money. It's a kilowatt hour for a kilowatt hour. You give BC Hydro a kilowatt hour, they'll give it back to you whenever you need it later.
So again, this is kind of why solar works, because you make your energy on the sunny days and you build them up to use them on the cloudy days. That is the current system, and it's 1-to-1 for kilowatt hour. Okay.
Exactly.
And net billing is the one they're looking at going to.
Right. Net billing is like currency exchange. It's like when you go to the bank and you want to buy euros or US dollars, the bank will sell it to you at one rate and buy it back to you at another rate. Of course, that rate differential is usually always in favor of the bank. And it's the same situation with BC Hydro. They're proposing that as soon as the kilowatt hours hit your meter, they convert it into dollars and they'll buy it from you at 10 cents. And then when they sell it back to you, they'll sell it back to you at the normal whatever rate tariff you're on. In the case of residential, that's about 15 cents a kilowatt hour. So BC Hydro will, I guess, make 5 cents on the transaction.
Now we'll get into the reasons for this and exactly what's happening. But another thing you're going to hear through this conversation is the BC Utilities Commission. So they're a big piece of this, and BC Hydro can't just make this change willy-nilly. They've got to apply to make this change to this commission. So can you kind of sum up that commission and its role in BC? Sure.
Yeah, great point, Chris. BC Hydro or the other utilities in the province are effectively monopolies. We don't have a choice, at least where I live, to buy electricity from any place else. I have to buy it from BC Hydro. My only other option is to go off grid. To ensure that BC Hydro or the other utilities are playing fair with everyone, the BC government put in place the BC Utilities Commission. And it's BC Hydro's governing body that approves different rate structures and other systems in place. So if BC Hydro wants to change its rates or change its offerings, they have to make an application to the BC Utilities Commission. There is an entire process. There's time for the general public and interveners like myself to review BC Hydro's application, to provide our own evidence, to make our own arguments. It's actually quite a process before the Utilities Commission approves or disapproves BC Hydro's application. But for larger policy changes, BC Hydro or Fortis or New West or Nelson can't just decide to do something themselves. They have to get approval from the Utilities Commission.
So that's kind of where all this began. And this was probably a year ago when BC Hydro announced, hey, we're looking at making this move to net billing, and they kind of applied for it. And then that's when the interveners had the opportunity.
Yeah, so BC Hydro made their original application in July of 2004. So this process has been going on for
2024.
2024, yeah. Oh, yeah, sorry.
It's a long
net metering
process.
started in 2004. Yeah, July of 2024, they made their application. And it's been basically a year and a half process going through it. Big events were in November. There was a public hearing where the interveners made their, presented their evidence and asked questions of BC Hydro. In early January, we all made our final arguments on BC Hydro's rate applications. So, yeah, like I said, it's been a year and a half process. And myself personally, I've put days and days of work into it. I know the other interveners similar. So it's fair to say that, thousands and thousands of person hours have gone into this process, which I do applaud the BC Utilities Commission for having that, very rigorous process in place. But yeah, not to underestimate the amount of time and money that's gone into this.
Well, now the interveners are kind of volunteer hours, it sounds like. Volunteer hours into this intervening, whereas I would assume BC Hydro, it's their lawyers.
Yeah, actually, that's another interesting point. So BC Hydro obviously is BC Hydro. If they want to hire lawyers or consultants, they have their own budget to do that with. And BC Hydro did hire lawyers and has hired an expert consultant to do the technical evaluation of net billing. With regards to interveners, if you're a not-for-profit group or a community group, you can apply to the Utilities Commission for funding to help you with your intervening costs. If you're working for a private company, such as Shift or Riverside or Charge Solar, unfortunately, you have to, pay for it on your own dime. So you cannot apply for any money from the Utilities Commission. So, interestingly here, industry is the one, that actually had to pay for it themselves.
Right, yeah. So now, layman's terms here, I'm hearing net metering is 1-to-1 kilowatt hour, and net billing is 1 for you, and I get less than 1 kilowatt hour back. So
Correct.
I'm right to assume here that the interveners are from the solar industry, because obviously that is going to affect the ROI on solar, which is a big reason people look at going solar.
The interveners are from everywhere.
Oh.
So there's several from the solar industry. Actually, we were the only group from the solar industry. There are other community organizations who are looking at solar as well, like the Community Solar Coalition, the BC Sustainable Energy Association, Clean Energy BC, etc. There were also other groups. So there was Zone 2 that were looking after the interests of the non-integrated area. And just to take a tangent, because I did that term. So there are some very rural areas in BC that aren't actually integrated into the primary grid. They're fed mostly off of diesel generators. And these are places like Haida Gwaii, Bella Coola. They're typically mostly First Nations and indigenous areas. And they pay more for electricity than we do. So there's those groups. There's also consumer advocacy groups looking into it, pension fund groups looking into it. There's a whole mix of people, which again is a great part of the process. It's not just us in the industry or some First Nations group saying, hey, we don't like this. It's a whole holistic process.
And you want it to be that way, perspective, so everyone can kind of figure out what the best way forward is.
For sure.
So final arguments were submitted. You mentioned kind of November, December were the big events, if you will.
Yeah.
And quickly speak to why, obviously BC Hydro's putting things forward. This is a move they want to do. Can you speak to a little bit, maybe we should have them on here, but as to why they see it being a good move? And then can you speak to a little bit as to why you're an intervener and why I think this might hurt the industry?
Yeah. So again, this rate application has more things than just net billing in it, but we were an intervener just on net billing.
Okay.
So I'll only talk to net billing. Primarily, BC Hydro is saying that there is an unfair amount of cost shifted from people who have solar panels onto people who don't have solar panels. Now, it kind of makes sense if you think about it from this point of view. If like myself, if you have solar panels and effectively do not have a hydro bill, so for example, like I don't have a hydro bill anymore. I don't even necessarily pay. I pay like $4 or $5 or the $6 a month. That's it. That's my hydro bill. But obviously, I'm still using BC Hydro in the evening, in the winter, etc. So I am making use of BC Hydro services, but I'm not really paying BC Hydro for those services. What BC Hydro is saying is those 9,000 people in the province who have solar panels, or BC Hydro customers who have solar panels, they're unfairly costing people who don't have solar panels more money. So those non-solar people, their bills are slightly
9,000 of them out of a province of 5 million, I think.
Well, yeah, so 9,000 of us are costing the other 2.5 million. BC Hydro doesn't have 5 million customers. They have about 2.25 million, if I remember my numbers correctly. So those 9,000 of us are costing the other 2.25 million a little bit of extra money every month. Okay. And BC Hydro is saying that that's unfair.
Got it. Okay. So this is their position in why they are moving to this net billing.
Exactly.
Solar, you need to start paying a piece of the pie.
You need to start paying your proportional piece of the pie. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And then now on the solar side, speaking to net billing specifically, why is that not great for solar?
So net billing is not great for solar because, well, I guess we kind of have to step back and kind of look at BC Hydro's argument a little bit about the unfairness. Because like I said, what they're saying is it's unfair. Unfortunately, BC Hydro is only looking at a subset of the benefits of solar to the system, to them. They're not looking at the actual holistic benefits of it. The reality is, solar panels on my house, the surplus I have doesn't go all the way back to BC Hydro and then over to Chris's house. It actually gets consumed by my neighbors, which means BC Hydro doesn't have to transport as much solar down to my neighborhood. In addition,
as much electricity.
Sorry? Electricity.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. In addition, there are societal benefits of actually having solar panels on your roof, right? There's less GHG emissions, or a whole other bunch of other things. And then third, and probably most importantly, is we are running out of, water in the summer in BC. And BC Hydro, as the hydro term dictates, depends on reserves of water or keeping water in their reservoir. Solar panels are great in that point of view because we're generating electricity in the summer, and that allows BC Hydro to keep more electricity up in their reservoirs. So when you actually look at it from a more holistic point of view, there are significant benefits to having solar panels that weren't taken into account in BC Hydro's calculations.
Right.
And it's kind of demonstrated by the fact that 5 years ago, BC Hydro was a net exporter of electricity to other jurisdictions. That's shifted over the last 5 years, primarily because of climate change, because of increased demand on the BC Hydro system, as well as there's just less water flowing, downstream. As a result, BC Hydro is now buying electricity primarily from the States to the amount of $1.4 trillion a year. So
wow.
It's a very large number. All this to say that BC Hydro didn't account for the, other benefits. In addition,
did they do surveys? Did they do surveys I don't know if they would have to surveys with the solar community, surveys with the non-solar community. Did they talk to anybody before they kind of came up with this plan?
Yeah, so they hired a consultant, and they told the consultant that we basically want you to do a literature search on net billing, come back to us with the model, given that we're only looking at the benefits to BC Hydro of solar panels, and tell us, what is the cost shifting amount going to be.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So they hired a consultant, said they were independent, but they kind of gave the consultant their marching orders to follow along. And the consultant did that. And they came back to BC Hydro with a report saying, here's what we think here's what non-solar clients or customers are going to save on with net billing.
Right. Okay. And now the intervener part of this, obviously you're getting involved and you guys are saying, wait a minute, these numbers aren't accurate for these reasons.
That's right.
And you've kind of put your case forward.
That's right. Yeah. So like I said, in November, we put together our evidence and said, you're missing A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. And because you're missing A, B, and C, the cost shifting actually isn't, what your consultant is saying it is. It's actually closer to this, or there may not be any cost shifting at all when you take into account other things. In addition, the one thing that our intervener group did that, to your earlier point, BC Hydro did not do, we actually did a survey of all of the local BC solar contractors, explained the situation to them and said, what do you think the impact on your business will be of going to net billing? Because to back up for a second, net billing does not provide as good a business case for people installing solar panels as net metering does.
Right, because, we're trying to diversify our energy portfolio and grow options, and a lot of people still look on what's the ROI? What's the ROI? That's the big question. And if I'm not getting 1-to-1 anymore, I'm getting 1 to 0.8, hurts the ROI, simple math.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So our survey showed that generally that the solar installers in BC expect a 25% decline in solar business because of net billing. And we provided that evidence back to BC Hydro and back to the Utilities Commission.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I feel like we need a BC Hydro representative. Maybe we need another one of these podcasts because I'm curious to ask them, what they think about that in this wild time we're living in, where Prime Minister Carney is standing on stage saying we have an opportunity to be an energy superpower. It's all here. Let's work together. And this seems very kind of like, hey, we're clean energy, but you guys got to pay your way. So I do understand the pay your way. I do understand that because when you're a solar user, it feels amazing to not have an energy bill.
Yeah.
So I wonder if there's some sort of middle ground here. But something else to talk about, and we should get to this, is really interesting turn of events happened a week ago, which is kind of motivation for this conversation, why I reached out to you.
Yeah.
Their argument seemed based on these numbers. We need you to pay more so that other people aren't paying for you.
Correct.
But, oh no, our math was wrong. We're sorry. So fill us in on that one.
Yeah, so just to provide a little bit of time frame, November we had the oral hearings, and then we had basically up until Christmas to submit our final arguments. And, again, that was an interesting process. I'm an engineer, I'm not a lawyer, but we were basically doing lawyer work, right? Trying to go through, put these things together. And again, I gained a lot of respect for lawyers for, having to read through hundreds of pages of documentation, putting a coherent argument together. It's not an easy thing to do. So on January 8th was the deadline for us to submit our final arguments to the Utilities Commission on net billing. We did that. Everybody else did that. One of the interveners, the Community Solar Coalition, as part of their final arguments, basically pointed out that BC Hydro BC Hydro's consultant had done their math wrong. And kudos to them for going through that. So then on January 14th, BC Hydro released a errata basically saying that, yes, we did our math wrong. and we've overstated the cost shifting by 194%.
That's a big overstate.
Yeah, it's not 19%, it's
Yeah.
not 2%, it's 194, almost double.
Wild.
So to put this in context, they said that originally in 2025 we expect the cost shifting savings for non-solar people to be about $3 million. With the new numbers, the cost shifting is more like $500,000.
Big change.
And when we put that in context again, over BC Hydro's 2.25 million customers, it works out to 22 cents a year or 4 cents per bill. So we've gone through this entire process, like I said, tens of thousands of hours, probably hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, so everybody can save 4 cents a bill. And that's not our numbers. That's the numbers now coming from BC Hydro.
Right. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Interesting. So you guys, as the interveners, what's the next step now? Now that, because there was supposed to be a decision soon, but now this has delayed things.
Yeah. So the BC Utilities Commission came back and said, okay, it's a mistake. We're going to give all the interveners another week to submit supplemental final arguments. So based on these numbers, you can now revise your final arguments and resubmit them. So we had until last Friday to do that.
I mean, I feel like if it's me, this is just me personally, I feel like, okay, I would like to revise, keep everything else I have, but please just highlight that they made a mistake. Like, that's my rebuttal. Your math was bad. Thank you. See other notes.
And there was interveners who were very exactly like pointed at you, saying this is garbage. This is a huge waste of time. BC Hydro and BC Hydro's contractors should be required to repay some of the money that we've all. Anyways,
right? I see.
A lot of the other ones were saying, well, putting this in light, which basically means that we spent a year and a half working under certain fundamental assumptions that are now been shown to be wrong.
Right.
Some people are saying this whole process needs to be thrown out. Others are saying, BC Hydro, you got to go back to the drawing board, clean up your homework and then show up again, when you're sure you have the right numbers.
I feel like if this was a court case in the media, it would be the jury is not kicked out, the case is done.
Yeah.
The facts are wrong. We have to completely start again. But they're just kind of like, we'll give you another week to bring up some other points and we'll go from there.
Yeah, because BC Hydro also, stated when they brought out the errata that even though this was a 194% mistake, it's not materially relevant to the fundamental arguments that they were making for net billing.
But weren't there arguments about math the whole time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So again, a lot of interveners kind of called.
Yeah.
I don't
Interesting situation. And again, BC Hydro's not here to defend themselves. I do want a full disclaimer on that. And Steve here is an intervener, and I'm in the solar industry. So if I'm coming across bias, I apologize for that, BC Hydro. We're just trying to stick to the facts on this, and it does seem. Is it a blanket? Is it commercial residential, or could be a happy medium here?
I mean, there could be a lot of different options here. It was a single amount that BC Hydro proposed to pay to every ratepayer for solar. So whether you're a large general service or a residential customer, you were going to get 10 cents a kilowatt hour.
Okay.
Irrespective of how much you bought it from BC Hydro for. We kind of felt, we originally went in and said, well, let's leave, net metering for residential, because 93% of the net metering people are residential, and then you're not really impacting them. They're the ones who are actually going out and spending, or in the past have spent, most of the money installing solar panels.
Right.
Let's honor that. And in fairness, BC Hydro came back and said that, well, here's the deal. If you are a net metering customer and you want to stay a net metering customer, you can do that for 20 years. But if you took the rebate, the $5,000 rebate, you have to give it back to us.
Mm. So the
Because
rebate is kind of like, hey, this is probably going to happen. I know it's going to cost you more money in the future because you're no longer getting one-to-one. So here's $5,000 just to ease that one.
Yeah. The $5,000 was to ease the pain of moving from net metering to net billing.
Interesting.
If you wanted to install solar panels.
Yeah.
So BC Hydro did make that offer to people. Of course, again, they didn't include in their model or their math. Well, what happens if a whole bunch of people say, all right, I do want to stay on net metering. That cost shifting doesn't go away because you've got all of these people still stuck on net metering for, the next 20 years.
Right. Doesn't solve anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of it, as the interveners started picking apart all of this stuff, a lot of the fundamental assumptions and a lot of the stuff just started kind of going away, and it just stopped making any sense. As I said, the cost shifting from BC Hydro did not include societal benefits.
Is there not, like, rather than attacking that rate and affecting the ROI, is there? How does this process work? In your rebuttals, can you offer up other solutions, or do you just have to focus on the one thing? Like, I'm already like, okay, charge me $50 a year. Sure, let's do that. I'm solar. I'll take my zero bills. I'll give you $50 a year to help towards everything else, and let's just call that a day. Is there other things that can be discussed, or is it like, nope, this is the plan, take it or leave it?
So again, that was interesting because BC Hydro had made their application. So it was the job of the interveners to, I guess, review and provide criticism and feedback on the application.
On what they...
Yeah.
Right,
now, in some ways, we could, during the evidence part of it, present other evidence, but we weren't necessarily allowed to present other models. But I mean, we could interject ideas and stuff like that. Once the evidence was submitted, though, that was kind of it for new ideas, right? From then on out, you were supposed to basically be looking at BC Hydro's application, the evidence presented by everybody else, and working with that.
Right. I was just going to say, I mean, I guess you could look at it and say, like, hey, you know what? BC Hydro is acknowledging that solar is the future because they're trying to get ahead of everyone in British Columbia getting solar panels, and they're left sitting over here being like, well, hey, we've got it. We got the system. You know what I mean? Maybe that's one perspective, to say that they see the writing on the wall, that there is a positive solar future in BC. So let's make sure we're covering our infrastructure, whatever it is they need to cover as well.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. And again, on one hand, BC Hydro was doing that. I mean, clearly they're out there promoting solar, promoting batteries, promoting renewable energy. Just before Christmas, we saw the Clean BC report come out, which was looking very heavily at renewables as a way of actually keeping our grid running. We also need to look at, we can't keep buying $1 trillion worth of electricity from the United States. That's not safe anymore. So very much we need to be looking at more renewables, and solar is the quickest and the fastest and the most reliable one to deploy in the province. So again, that was part of our criticism, right? BC Hydro made this application a year and a half ago, right? It was a very different world, 18 months ago than it is now.
Yeah.
And we need to revisit this whole thing completely. And a lot, in fairness, a lot of the other interveners were saying, again, because of this mistake, because of what's going on down south, we need to basically revisit this whole thing. This is not the time to start making changes to what's been a very successful program for BC Hydro and for BC, and I'm talking about net metering here, as a way of getting private citizens or the public to actually install solar panels.
Right.
The public has basically installed BC Hydro 132 megawatt generating facility for free.
Right.
We've done that on our own. You've done that on your house. I've done that on my house.
Yeah. Yeah. And we've, as individuals, post-tax income, paid for these installs. So yeah, it was no cost to them. The cost to them is tracking it on our meter, maintaining the power lines,
Yeah.
and the infrastructure.
Yeah.
What is okay? So hypothetically, first off, are we close to a decision? Where are we at in that? And like, I feel like this is like an Oscars moment where you get some pizza party together and you get some friends together. When's that?
I don't know. So, like I said, the supplemental final arguments went in on Friday.
Okay.
The Utilities Commission, I guess, can take as long as they need to deliberate on it. It feels this one's going to take a little bit longer because there's been a lot more controversy, and then of course there's been this big math error at the end. So I would hope maybe by the end of February we might get an answer.
Okay.
Now BC Hydro was hoping to introduce net billing on April 1st of this year. That may or may not get delayed. We'll have to see what happens when the Utilities Commission comes back. But yeah, you're right. This does feel a little bit like reality TV.
Yeah.
Who's going to get voted off the island?
And people thought there was no drama in solar, hey? Yeah. Interesting. What do you feel in your gut? You were there, you did the proceedings. It sounds a bit like David versus Goliath, maybe. It was a lot of kind of solar passionate and solar enthusiasts and people in the industry and organizations that see solar as a very beneficial power source versus kind of Goliath, who's like, yep, we would like to do this.
Yeah. It might be best to quote one of my fellow interveners. And he said before BC Hydro had their math error, he was feeling like it was probably about 40-60. So 40% towards us and 60% towards BC Hydro. That the Utilities Commission was sitting more on their side in terms of ruling that way.
Right.
He feels, and I agree with him, that since this big math error, the scales have tipped the other direction. I think we have a slightly better chance of it, and I would hope, the Utilities Commission, because they are supposed to be an independent body that is looking out for British Columbians and for BC, right? They don't work for BC Hydro, they work for us.
Right.
That they would look at it and at least say, you know what, BC Hydro, you've raised a lot of questions. You haven't provided a burden of proof or, there is reasonable doubt as to your model, as to whether this is going to actually make a difference to people.
Mm-hmm.
And we would like you to go off and, like I said, redo your homework and come back to us, in another year when you think you have a better argument, or when you've had your consultant go off and take into account some of these things that other interveners are saying. It's
kind of, for lack of a better term, ballsy to propose this program and start handing out $5,000 checks. I mean, kind of assuming it's going to go through. And all of a sudden, if it doesn't go through, who's the person that's like, oh, what about, we just got denied and we've already handed out for the last year a bunch of $5,000 checks. Like, what happens there?
Yeah, I mean, fair enough, right? I mean, BC Hydro in some ways got ahead of themselves. I think maybe this process, I've spoken with a couple other interveners. This is my first time intervening. I've spoken with other people who've been there before. They say for the most part, a lot of the other rate applications are less controversial, and they basically go through. In some ways, I don't want to say it, but in some ways, it's almost a rubber stamp process.
Right.
So I think that's what BC Hydro maybe was thinking, that this would be as well. And yeah, you're right. They started ramping up their marketing. They started, giving people rebates, all of these other things. And there could be significant amount of mud on people's faces at BC Hydro if they realize we're not getting net billing and we've handed out millions of dollars in rebates.
Yeah, right. Well, that's someone else's problem.
Exactly.
Above our pay grade. Hey, there it is. Yeah, totally. Interesting. Wow. And the journey for yourself, a lot of personal growth here, and as a solar enthusiast, as somebody who's not a lawyer.
Yeah. Like I said, I've worked with some incredible people, and I'm so grateful. I don't want to name everybody on the air here because I embarrass them, but yeah, some of some extremely high quality people I've worked with on this on both sides. I have a lot of respect for BC Hydro and a lot of people who work at BC Hydro, and I know they were doing their jobs. But it is everybody's responsibility to step back and think about what is the best thing for BC, what is the best thing for our kids, what is going to keep the lights on going forward at a reasonable cost to everybody. And
it does feel like there's a happy middle ground. It feels like there is, because just like you said, we need as a solar user in BC, we need BC Hydro. We need what they're offering, their meters, their lines, their employees. Like, we need that. So I understand a case to support that still, even though I'm not paying for power anymore. But also I see 100% see the other side is like, oh, does like hurting the industry, 25% you mentioned, does hurting the industry, is that the middle ground? It just seems like I would hope that the Utilities Commission comes back and just says, let's just put a pin in this and revisit. There's a lot of things happening in the world right now.
For sure. Yeah, and that's why, we kind of suggested middle ground before the math era of saying, net metering for resi, net billing for commercial.
Right.
Of course, when they came back with their math error, and basically the entire business case for net billing went away, and yet net billing was going to start costing the industry. It's cost BC Hydro more money to administer, a whole bunch of other things. It's like, why are you guys doing all of this for $500,000?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, $500,000 is a lot to you and I, but to BC Hydro, it's
totally. Yeah. They've probably spent that in lawyer fees.
I would love to know, maybe when you get BC Hydro on, you can ask them how much they've spent on this application.
Yeah,
totally.
Very interesting. To get that 500,000. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. And again, it's, 4 cents per bill for you and I, right?
Right.
Less than a nickel.
Yeah. Yeah, powerful numbers, really interesting process, and it's all been happening behind the scenes. Your average, that's my neighbor who does not have solar, has no clue what this change looks like and all of it. And just speaking for my neighbors, they're all excited to see solar in the neighborhood. It's a good thing. It's a positive thing. It's a morale booster. It's an independence thing. And they like seeing the world move that way. So it would be a shame to see it kind of take a step back if things did change. Yeah, tough spot for everybody all involved. But it would be nice maybe to have some more thought, especially because this huge math error after the fact.
Yeah. Well, and again, to your point, we suggested to BC Hydro a long time ago, and this was before their math error, when it was we were gonna save, I don't know, I can't remember the exact numbers, like a dollar a bill. Right. There'd be $1 savings of cost shifting, not on your and my bill, but on non-solar. And we said, do a survey, go out there and say to, people, would you be okay, for an extra $1 a bill promoting solar in the province?
Yeah, totally. What's that survey come back as, hey?
Exactly. But because again, BC Hydro didn't do that survey. Okay. They just relied on the literature search done by their consultant.
That's right. Yeah. Well, we'll see. I guess if they're kind of, the things are not the old world order is no more. Applying for things and just pushing them through or whatever it is. People are so much more aware, and especially in the solar community. Wow. Yeah. People are very passionate individuals, and I've seen net billing conversations everywhere. Victoria EV Association is big time watching it as EV drivers. They love driving on sunshine, and so they're on this one as well.
Yeah.
Interesting conversation. Well, I look forward to these results whenever they come in. Yeah. That's Steve Unger, an intervener with the net metering to net billing rate application that BC Hydro put in over a year ago, joining the Solar PVcast today to enlighten us on where that stands. And we're kind of in the waiting game right now.
Definitely.
Can somebody do anything? I mean, like you said, things were submitted a week ago.
Yeah, not at this point. The process is closed. And again, I will also want to thank, the 140 people who actually submitted letters to the Utilities Commission.
Oh, wow.
So good on you for doing that. But at this point, no, it's closed. Okay. We're just waiting on the Utilities Commission to decide.
So there you have it. I feel like we just caught up with the Hollywood gossip. This is the new TMZ for solar. So we're just waiting to see what happens.
Yeah.
Steve, thank you so much for taking time to join the PVcast today.
You're welcome, Chris. Take care.
The Solar PVcast by Shift with Chris Palliser. To begin your solar journey, visit shift.ca.